AIG boost, at least $40 billion more, likely more, on top of more than $80 billion it has gotten already, which has gotten former presidential candidate Ron Paul saying, "I told you so." Now, we're going to have the new head of AIG in here a little bit later on this show, to Congressman Ron Paul, on the phone, not a fan of what we have just done. Congressman, explain.
Well, it's just more of the same. We're digging a bigger hole for ourselves. We have no money in the bank. And here we're granting another $40 billion, but we actually put in another $52 billion purchasing mortgage securities from AIG. So it's a lot more. It's estimated now it's $150 billion. But we don't have the money. We are broke. And it just won't work. It's just more inflation. They have to create money out of thin air. The deficits are skyrocketing, and nobody takes a pause. This idea that we must spend money isn't correct. If you or I were in trouble, we had spent too much and borrowed too much, we would have to cut our spending, we'd have to work harder, and we'd have to save some money. Then we would get back on our feet again. That is what a country has to do, and that is unacceptable politically because nobody wants to advocate it.
Do you think, Congressman, there is such a thing as an entity being too big to fail, that you can't let it go under?
I can't think of any. No, if you're too big, then you're too cumbersome. If I think that's the way government should be. Government's too big, and it should fail. We should shrink government. When companies get too big and they make mistakes, unfortunately, a lot of mistakes are made because of the bad information we get from our government and the bad monetary system that we have. But big companies make mistakes, and they should fail. That's the most important thing that can happen if you believe in the free market and if you believe in punishing the people who made the mistakes, who could have made a lot of money. But instead, we're propping up all the bad mistakes, and people, and if we do that, then that takes the money away from the people who made the correct decision. So the people who are paying their mortgages now are required to be taxed or penalized to take care of the people who made all the mistakes and overextended themselves and lived beyond their means, and they were the big consumers because we told them, consume.
I'm wondering, though, if it's even bigger than that, Congressman, that now we have encouraged folks, industries, individuals to go to the government at the first sign of distress. And part of the strategy for this is we need to stimulate things. We need to get the government going again. And we'll figure out the ramifications and the cost of all of this after this. What do you think of that?
I think it's a serious mistake because governments can't make the correct decisions. Even if they did have the money, which they don't, if they had the money, they're not smart enough to say where it should be spent. It's a bunch of bureaucrats and politicians. I mean, if you said, well, we need energy. Well, how do you know which is the best energy? Maybe it's coal, maybe it's nuclear, maybe it's gas. But this whole idea that Washington are geniuses and that they can do central economic planning, I mean, that's what all socialism is based on. In this country, we don't call it socialism. We call it just interventionism and a planned economy. But the confidence is placed once again on politicians and bureaucrats that just don't know. And this whole idea that they have the reins of power, control over the money, and now over the investment in the financial system, it cannot be solved that way.
So you don't see any big difference with the Obamas coming in and the Bushes leaving? The same type of government continues?
No. I think it's a lot like Hoover leaving and Roosevelt coming in, because Hoover had a lot of these programs designed, and Roosevelt extended them, and therefore a bad situation turned into a prolonged depression. So, yes, all our programs so far have been wrong. They've been wrong for 30 years. It created the bubble, and all the solutions are wrong. And in spite of all this talk about change, there's absolutely no change other than maybe more excessive. Maybe there'll be more bailouts than ever before. But they're not going to cut spending. They won't talk about this $1 trillion a year we spend overseas maintaining our empire. You cannot get our house in order if we don't address foreign policy. And it is one and the same. You can't separate our domestic financial problems from our foreign entanglements.
All right. Congressman, always good having you on. Thank you very much.